So let's talk about launching, and specifically about launching online, whether it's an online course, a membership site, a mastermind, a coaching program, a service, a product, whatever. We're going to talk about launching online because, well, that's become my life's work. I've been teaching people how to do it for over 15 years. And before that, there was 8 years of me actually figuring out how to do it in my business before I started teaching it. So I've got some experience at this. And one of the things that I know, this is critical, because a lot of times people are like, I'm going to do this launch. And whether you're studying all my free stuff, like in my free masterclass, or you've read my book, or you've gone through my Product Launch Formula coaching program, or you've gone through my launch club even, I have a variety of teaching and training. But this is one absolutely internal truth that you need to absorb, no matter where you are, anywhere in my training, or anywhere in your entire journey, is that your first launch is just your first launch. And your eventual success is not going to be defined by how many sales you make. It's going to be defined by you actually launching. It's interesting. I was just looking. Here's a question for you. I don't know how to pronounce this. There's an app. BURBN. To me, it looks like bourbon, like, the whiskey. So BURBN. Have you ever heard of that app? I hadn't. I just went and I'm looking at Wikipedia right now on my phone. Well, Bourbon was a mobile check-in app. So a mobile check-in, whatever that means. A mobile check-in app created by Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger. Now, you probably haven't heard of that app, Bourbon. I hadn't. But that app is what became Instagram. They looked around and said, they were not having great success here. There's other apps that are doing the same thing that are too similar to us. So we're going to create an app for photo sharing. And that app became Instagram. Clearly, one of the most amazing launch stories ever was Instagram. It grew. It's a major force these days, right? It's a unicorn, and it started off as this other app that no one ever heard of. So what I'm saying is that whatever you launch is not going to be your last effort, your last launch, your last product, your last service offering, unless you just quit. My first launch ever did $1,650. And now everyone's got a different frame of reference for money, but I spent about 6 months building up to that launch. And for some people, spending 6 months to get to $1,650, 6 months of hard work would not be that impressive. For me, it was like I couldn't believe someone would actually pay me for something. That's where I was. This is in late 1996, early 1997, and where my thinking was at that point was that I'd never sold a thing in my life. No one had ever bought anything that I created. I came out of this background where, my parents, it was all corporate. I'd been in the corporate world. I'd failed in the corporate world. I was trying to restart, and I created something, and I put it out there online, and someone actually said, in fact, a few people actually raised their hand and said, yes, I'll send you money for this. The operative word was send, because back then I had people send me a check. Doing online transactions back then was like rocket science that I couldn't figure out. So I said, send me a check. And it was a very small number, but a small number of people said, I'll send you that check. And I made $1,650. So it was so incredibly intoxicating, exciting that someone would pay me for that. But right then I had this thought, and this is one of the most important thoughts I've ever had in my head. And my thought was, if I did that once, I can do it again, and I can do it again, and I can do it again. And maybe I'll even get better at it. And, that's what happened is the next launch was 6,000, then 8,000, then a year or two later, 34,000, and then a couple of years later, $106,000. And the launches kept on getting better. And you know what? My offer, what I was actually selling, kept on evolving and evolving and evolving as I learned more about the market. So when you launch, you will learn so much about yourself, about your avatar, your perfect prospect, about your market, about what kind of messaging works, about what people want to buy from you as opposed to what you want to sell to them. So I'm saying, just like Instagram didn't start off as Instagram. They just started moving. They got an app out there. And they started evolving right away and figuring out what the market needed. I did the same thing. I'm sitting here right now, 25 some years later, teaching you about marketing, teaching you about online business, teaching you about launches. That's my business, is teaching about launches. Back in 1997, I was teaching people about the stock market. I had no idea. I had no experience at marketing. I had no experience at sales. I developed all of that along the way. And so what I'm saying is, whatever you want to launch, the most important thing is that you just get that launch done. Not what the results are, not what the offer is, not how many you sell, but that you launch, that you get it done. Because motion creates motion, and motion creates learning. And when you get that first launch done, you're going to know so much. There will never be a greater learning that you'll ever have in your entrepreneurial life than going through that first promotion, going through that first launch. But if you're sitting on the sideline, you can't have that learning. If I look now where my mindset is compared to then, I literally, back then, I could not, I was shocked that people would pay me for something that I could create, because I'd always been in this world where I went to a job and I did a job and I got a paycheck. I wasn't in the world of I create something, I put it out into the world, and I get paid for that value that I create. That's what entrepreneurs do, is they get paid for the value they create. But when they start out, there are almost no, I don't think there are any unicorns that just start out and automatically have huge success. It's a gradual process, but you can't get to that process. You can't, until you get in the game, then you're nothing, you're nowhere. And it's not like you're nothing. You're a great, wonderful human being. But in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, you haven't gone anywhere yet until you get into the game. And getting into the game is defined by launching, by putting together an offer and putting that offer in front of some people to see if they pay you. The hardest dollar you'll ever make is the first dollar. It's because of what it takes to get to that point of having someone give you that first dollar. And after you get that first dollar, that's way harder than getting to your first $1,000. And getting to your first $1,000 is so much harder than getting to 10,000, just because there's that initial inertia. And that's your job, is to overcome that inertia and get to your first launch. Because there is no second launch without the first one. Everyone's first effort is the shakiest, the scariest, the roughest. But until you get there, until you just can't get to the second launch, or the third, or the fifth, or the 10th, because that's where all the success comes from. So I'm Jeff Walker. Wherever you're watching this, scroll down, leave a comment for me, and let's go get them this week.